I'm Sigmund Freud, and Shakespeare dug me up to guest star on this week's episode. I'm not sure how she did that because I was cremated in 1939, but this is a channel on YouTube, not Yale. And it's not like this Shakespeare girl could get into Yale anyways, because she said I was American in the last episode, even though I'm Austrian. American bias. Poison on one's lips. So in the last episode, we talked at length about daddy issues, how these symptoms, and I use that word very loosely, how these symptoms manifest in people, primarily in women, how daddy issues can be traced all the way back to my Oedipus complex theory, as well as Carl Jung's Electra complex. This isn't in the script, but fuck Carl Jung, I'm the superior psychoanalyst. This episode is a much requested extension of her daddy issues video and is all about the maternal figure, the esteemed mommy. She wants me to tell you that this video is in collaboration with another channel on this platform, Film Fatales. What a wonderful name, and it's so easy to pronounce. I bet there's some idiot out there who has called it Film Tamales before. While uncovering the broad topic of mommy issues like its history, manifestations, and impact on the culture, Film will be covering mommy issues and the maternal figure in horror movies as part of our two-part October collaboration. And you can find that linked below in the description. Whatever that means. Do they still put Coke in Coke? No? What a shame. According to Brittany Loggins, just like daddy issues, mommy issues is not a clinical term, nor is it diagnosable by professionals in the medical field. This must be some new age science, because back in my day, you could diagnose anything. Suffering from hysteria, dear? Well, here's a vibrator. Unlike the academic field, the general public has what it thinks is a very firm grasp on mommy issues. Urban Dictionary features entries that describe emotional abuse from mothers, bad parenting, and maternal absence. Memes about mommy issues feature virgin jokes, insult jokes, and anime jokes. It is agreed upon by just about everyone on the internet, it seems, that this phrase is heavily gendered. Just like how daddy issues are typically attributed to women, mommy issues are inherently linked to men in pop culture. Crystal Raypole, author of When Mommy Dearest Isn't So Dear, Unpacking Mommy Issues, as well as the previously mentioned source by Brittany Loggins, backs up this gendered belief. Raypole specifically asserts that mommy issues is often a term used derogatorily against men, especially men who display traits like emotional distance, discomfort with intimacy, or difficulty showing vulnerability. Mommy issues are much more complex than insult jokes and
Excuse me? Excuse me? Excuse me? Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy?
TikToks. For the sake of this video though, I think we can separate the broad topic of mommy issues into three distinct categories. The first category is the category most neglected, ironically so, and that is the abuse/neglect category. The second category is the smothering category, and this describes how servile/overbearing mothers impact their children. The third and final category is the mother wound category, which analyzes the so popular incel or male chauvinist theory that's popular among mommy issue discussion. And because this topic is a gendered topic, I will be spending most of it discussing its relation to boys and men. However, Shakespeare would like for me to tell you that she is incapable of not analyzing women in the media. So I will also be looking at how mommy issues translate into the mother-daughter dynamic, briefly talking about abuse and its portrayal in the media, as well as discussing how mommy issues in women often translates into intergenerational trauma. Sometimes I realize that with every passing word, I'm just proving man carrying thing right about their video essay meme.
In this 4.5-hour video essay, I'm going to explore why SpongeBob is, a really good show. Part 1. Early cinema.
In pop culture, the maternal figure is depicted as loving, nurturing, compassionate, and selfless. She works odd hours and comes home to work even odder ones, so long as it means her children, husband, and household are in happy working order. She is warm, forgiving, and more or less serves as the foil to the paternal figure. Where fathers are shown as protectors, guides, and fierce fighters, mothers are much more gentle in their depiction. This may seem very familiar to you if you exist, because these traits and their gendered association have been hammered into us through books, films, television shows, and even our day-to-day lives for years. Something I like to call Great Gender Expectations by Charles Dickens. In their honors thesis titled Gender Differences in Parenting Styles and the Effects on the Parent-Child Relationship, Meredith Ashley Stevens describes gender roles and the expectations that follow within a household. Pink means feminine, and feminine means
clean up after others for the rest of your life.
Because of the perceived difference between men and women, that being women are more loving, nurturing, etc., it is believed that women are just better at parenting, and that somehow absolves fathers of the same responsibilities bestowed upon mothers. A 2001 and 2002 study both show that mothers spend more time with their children. They have more responsibility over their children, and even when they work full-time, they still statistically spend 2 to 3 times more time with their children. How many times will I have to say time in this script? Meredith Stevens' honors thesis and the information it provides about motherhood and gender roles is important to this discussion because it further solidifies the maternal figure as an ever-present being. Mothers have to love us, have to nurture us, because it is apparently hardwired into women's very being to do so, which makes the abusive or neglectful mother that much harder to confront. If mothers are so loving and nurturing to the point that pop culture's depiction of her rarely shows the opposite, how do we account for the ones that physically harm their children or cut their children down with harsh words? How do we grapple with the fact that our perfect unconditional parent no longer represents what she's quote-unquote supposed to, especially when the victims of that abuse or neglect are boys or men? For some reason, it's very hard for us as a society to take male victims seriously, and I believe that's reflected in the mommy issues discussions on social media. Abuse is very rarely brought up as a reason for mommy issues, but in reality, women make up 56% of all known abusers based on data released by the CDC, and according to Rosemary Black, author of Children of Mean, Psychologically Abusive Mothers Suffer Well into Adulthood, the most common form of abuse carried about by women is psychological or emotional. Emotional abuse consists of name-calling, yelling in an attempt to intimidate, being dismissive or patronizing, insulting someone's appearance, belittling someone's accomplishments, putting down someone's interests, threatening, spying, and gaslighting. And you can imagine the sort of scars this will leave a person, especially when this form of abuse is coming from someone no one would really expect it to come from. Peg Streep is the author of Mean Mothers, a novel that explores what Streep calls a cultural taboo, that being the unloving mother. Streep's book and subsequent article that I chose as a source for this video does focus more on the mother-daughter relationship, so I won't go too deep into it for this specific section. But Streep does present a powerful insight into what it's like having that image of the affectionate maternal figure placed at odds with the tragic reality that not all mothers are affectionate or secure in their bonds with their children. She states, "The key point is that a daughter's need for her mother's love is a primal driving force, and that need doesn't diminish with unavailability. It coexists with the terrible and damaging understanding that the one person who is supposed to love you without condition doesn't." For men of abusive, neglectful, or even absent mothers, mommy issues can present itself as insecurity, emotional unavailability, fear or discomfort of intimacy, a need for maternal guidance in decision-making, and a lack of commitment to other relationships. And like daddy issues, these symptoms and informal diagnoses can be traced back in history, starting with the Oedipus complex that I invented, and being further developed until the late 1950s when John Bowlby introduced attachment theory. John Bowlby was a British psychologist and psychoanalyst. like me, that began exploring the impact that outside influences like environment and parenting had on children after he graduated Cambridge University. Childhood and the trauma that may crop up during that most vulnerable time was very important to Bowlby, because he grew up with a very distant relationship to his own parents. Of course, this was back during a time when European families of wealth believed that giving too much attention to their children would lead them to grow up being spoiled. Thus, wealthier families hired nannies and nursemaids, and it's by these strangers that the children were raised. It's even reported that Bowlby usually only saw his mother for 1 hour a day. At the age of 7, his parents sent him and his older brother to boarding school, an event that Bowlby said deeply traumatized him. And he later wrote about the situation, saying that he wouldn't have even, quote, sent a dog away to boarding school at the age of 7. End quote. All of this culminated in Bowlby growing his fascination with psychology, psychoanalysis, and the importance of parental figures in a child's life. Thus, in 1958, he introduced attachment theory. According to Crystal Ray Pohl, attachment theory suggests babies are born with the need to attach to their primary caregiver. End quote. Both Ray Pohl and Bowlby assert that this attachment is best connected to your mother or a mother figure. I'm assuming that's due to those pesky gender roles we talked about earlier. Kendra Cherry, who wrote a brief biography on Bowlby, references a 1951 study commissioned to Bowlby by who? The World Health Organization. In this study, Bowlby was to analyze the mental health of homeless children in Europe. Of it, he states, "The infant and young child should experience a warm, intimate, and continuous relationship with his mother or permanent mother substitute, one person who steadily mothers him, in which both find satisfaction and enjoyment." End quote. This intimate, warm, and continuous relationship with a mother or mother figure may lead a child to having a secure attachment. Children with secure attachments may grow up feeling secure and safe in their relationships, because most, if not all, of their needs were met in childhood. In a case of opposite parenting, where a child's needs are not met, or if their parent is mercurial or absent, you may grow up having the following 3 styles. There is the anxious, preoccupied style, where you are highly insecure, anxious, codependent, afraid of abandonment, and sensitive. Dismissive avoidant is where you fear intimacy, have trust issues, are fiercely independent, or cold towards others. Finally, there is the fearful avoidant or disorganized attachment style, where you are fickle. Hot and Cold by Katy Perry may be your favorite song, and you have trouble setting boundaries. Hot and Cold by Katy Perry is a banger, just so we're clear. Shanspeare played it for me as she reversed the effects of my cremation. These attachment styles are not only significant to our development because they quite possibly impact every relationship we have in our future, but they are also innate. Just as Peg Streep stated that unloved or neglected children don't stop loving their parents because of that primal need to do so, children interact the same with these attachment styles. We can't just choose not to attach to our caregivers because it is imperative that we do so in order to survive. Babies are weak, if you haven't noticed. A piece of hair would win in a fight against a newborn. So they need someone stronger, someone who can open doors and lift their head for more than 3 seconds without falling over. I am not roasting babies, by the way. I'm stating facts. Attachment ensures our survival. Bowlby was partially influenced in this aspect by Konrad Lorenz, a zoologist who conducted studies on geese to see how innate attachment is for young offspring. There's a very critical window of time for young children to attach to their caregivers, and in this time, they begin building trust for their caregivers, so long as their caregiver gives them ample attention and love. My mother gave me ample attention and love. In fact, I was her favorite child. She called me her golden Siggy. All of that attention and care really had no adverse effect on me. None whatsoever. I think I grew up to be quite a charming, intelligent man.
Lies, lies, and more lies, and lies on top of lies.
The smothering mother and the damage she can cause to her son presents itself like an oxymoron. If you're from the deep south in the United States like Shanspeare, and you hear the word smothered, It sounds positive. I mean, Southerners have smothered biscuits, smothered pork chops, smothered chicken and rice. That sounds atrocious. Because the word smothered has the potential to come off as a positive word, people who have never been smothered by a parent may associate it with receiving extra love, attention, and affection from their parents. But smothered quite literally means to kill by suffocation or to obscure and stifle. And there is simply no Southern comfort in that. Take Eric Foreman and Kitty Foreman from That 70s Show as examples. Kitty is written to be overbearing, overprotective, and almost Hitchcockian in her quest to be the only woman in Eric's life. When she finds out Eric lost his virginity to his girlfriend Donna, Kitty falls into a deep depression, even going so far as to blame Donna for stealing Eric away from her and calling Donna a in the process. It's done in a silly, goofy way to keep audiences entertained because, of course, it's a sitcom. But what Kitty does in this instance, and what she does throughout the series as she tries to control and keep Eric close to her, is strip him of his emotional independence. Deidre Wallace, a clinical psychologist, relationship therapist, and author of Emotionally Smothering a Child is the Same as Abandoning a Child, gives 2 examples of emotional smothering and the effect it has on developing children. The first example describes a parent and a child going to a park to play. The child sees a tree, has a desire to climb it, and asks their mom if they can. Wallace argues that a healthy choice would be to allow that child to explore, build self-confidence, and obtain independence by allowing them to climb the tree. Of course, if they're hurt, you will be there to help them. The unhealthy choice would be the smothering option. Driven by the fear of their child being independent or getting hurt, the mother becomes overbearing, overprotective, and refuses to allow their child to explore. This stifles a child's independence, self-confidence, and teaches them that they are not able to do things themselves. They need their mother there to make their decisions for them. The impact of an emotionally smothered son in a mother-son relationship is that the son may grow up completely dependent on his mother, to the point where he seeks out relationships with other women who will take his mother's place, who will cook for him, clean for him, make all of the decisions in his life for him. Or, as I told my dear fiancé in 1933, even a marriage is not made secure until the wife has succeeded in making her husband her child, as well as in acting as a mother to him." End quote. Of course, gender roles can play a big part in the smothering mother's motive. There are mothers who only smother their sons with little to no interest in being servile or overbearing toward their daughters. This can create what Brittany Loggins calls the mama's boy, a boy who is very close to their obsequious mother. Loggins states, "Mommy issues in men can happen when moms are super servile and instill in men a sense that this is how women should behave. It can lead to men having expectations of such behavior in romantic relationships, and even seeking out female partners who check this box. It can also lead to them mentally pitting their romantic partner's attributes against their mother's." End quote. So by now, the elephant in the room is the concept of gender roles and how much they feed the traits associated with mommy issues. Constant servitude, motherhood, and submission is constantly being associated with people who are assigned female at birth. There is indeed a general expectation in society for AFAB people to become mothers, be feminine, and fall into a life of cooking and cleaning and Freudian affection. But there is a specific subcategory of mommy issues that is specifically dedicated to such gender roles and expectations that doesn't fall under smothering mothers. It's what Michael Kaufman and Michael Kimmel call the mother wound. The mother wound theory pops up in a journal article titled "Shocked into Maturity: Sex and Death as Initiation in the Fiction of Lewis Norton" by Thomas Bier. God, I love a good title. Thomas's article analyzes how Lewis Norton depicts the initiation process between boyhood and manhood within his novels. This initiation process is more often than not associated with sex, death, or both in rapid succession, often scarring or shocking a boy into a man. What's interesting about this source is that Thomas finds a sort of Oedipal flourish within Lewis Norton's novels, primarily in novels that feature a boy rejecting the perceived weakness of his mother's femininity and aligning with his father's masculinity in order to survive. Thomas presents a theory by Michael Kaufman and Michael Kimmel called the mother wound, which describes a boy's attempt to flee from the perceived weakness of femininity by throwing himself headfirst into hypermasculinity to the point of it becoming toxic. This toxic sense of masculinity is portrayed through stoicism, aggression, heterosexism, and forms of misogyny, such as aspiring to dominate women or degrade them. It can be argued, therefore, that male chauvinism is a trait of mommy issues if we consider the mother wound theory. Boys learn that women are inferior, weak, and powerless. They grow up to idealize a certain form of masculinity, a form that is the perceived exact opposite of femininity. And then they spend just about all of their life performing aggression, misogyny, and stoicism in an attempt to be seen as superior. The interesting thing about the mother wound theory is that it names and shames the wrong thing. The mother in this case does no direct or even indirect harm to her son. She simply exists as a woman under a male-dominated system, which perceives her as inferior to men, and yet she is still blamed somehow for her son finding women inferior, a trait he picked up from the patriarchy. Ain't that about a... Because mommy issues are presented in such a gendered way and is once again not understood enough in pop culture, which leads to misused insults and stigma against men, I don't think a lot of conversation is dedicated to women who are in the same boat. When we think of conflicting relationships between daughters and mothers, I don't think we often ascribe the label mommy issues to it, partially because I think it's normalized to be at odds with your mother, especially as a teenage girl. Some people call it the mother wound, which is different from the male mother wound that we just discussed. Others call it the pitfalls of teenagehood, or others still simply call it what it is: abuse. Daughters with mommy issues may tell you stories of overcritical mothers, mothers who nitpick, ostracize, and overanalyze. These daughters may have grown up in a household where everything they did was perceived as wrong and were swiftly punished by their mothers. They grew up knowing deep in their hearts they were never going to be good enough for their mother. Peg Streep, who I mentioned at the beginning of this video in relation to her novel Me and Mothers, lists what she calls 7 wounds that stem from overcritical mothers. These 7 wounds are a lack of confidence, lack of trust, lack of boundaries, difficulty seeing the self in an accurate way, being avoidant in relationships, being overly sensitive, and trying to replicate the bond you have with your mother in your everyday relationships. Sandy Wynn, author of The Mother Wound, describes this wound as, quote, the pain, wounding, and trauma that's carried by a mother and inherited by her children, with daughters facing the brunt of this wound, end quote. Wynn recounts her own relationship with her mother, citing differences in life philosophies, generational and cultural beliefs. Something that I thought was interesting about this source was the way in which Wynn explains the cause of mother wounds. Some examples she gives are war, refugee experience, poverty, racism, colonialism, abuse, and untreated mental illness. The first 5 are rarely spoken about and sit mainly at the intersection of parenting styles and racialized experiences. For example, Wynn is an Asian American woman raised in a household that she asserts is divided by cultural and generational differences. She was raised with specific gender expectations alongside expectations as a daughter of Asian American parents. Wynn even writes that some of the stress in the relationship with her mother came from feelings of being controlled and suffocated, while not being able to voice those concerns due to the sacrifices her mother made for her. The mother wound in Daughters is very bittersweet because, as I mentioned before, the mother figure in pop culture is presented as loving, warm, and compassionate. Sometimes the mother in our real life does represent this stock image, but other times she can be the exact opposite. And as Wen pointed out, this bittersweet personality can be a trauma response or be passed down through generations of mothers. Nothing represents this better, in my opinion, than Lady Bird. Lady Bird is a 2017 coming-of-age dramedy by Greta Gerwig, starring Saoirse Ronan as the titular Lady Bird. Though the movie focuses on other teenage happenings like sex, romance, and friendship, I think its exploration of maternal abuse is the most impactful theme within the movie. Lady Bird's mother, Marion, is emotionally abusive. I know that may seem harsh because the movie and Lady Bird herself forgive Marion despite Marion not changing the way she interacts with her daughter. Let me revise that by saying forgive may not be the exact word I'm looking for. I don't think the movie nor Lady Bird forgives Marion so much as they come to understand Marion. Those aren't the same thing. Lady Bird and the film, by extension, finally view Marion as a multi-dimensional person, as most abusers are. She's able to be kind and nurturing to other people, namely her co-workers and patients. Shelley is able to see a different side of Marion that's warm and accepting, and Marion's even able to cheer Lady Bird up by spending quality time with her. And yet, Marion is still emotionally abusive. All of the good she does doesn't negate the harm she inflicts, and the movie tries to be aware of this. I just wish there was less understanding and more. My inner child doesn't need understanding, she needs a gun. Also, while I was searching for clips to use in the following section, I saw a lot of comments under those videos sort of write off Marion's actions toward Lady Bird in the movie, saying she isn't an abusive mom and everyone who thinks she is must have been born in a white suburb or were spoiled as children. Let's not mince words here. Those are stupid arguments. They awaken an evil inside of me and it invalidates victims of emotional abuse. So I'm getting rid of 80% of my remaining script and we're going to talk about what emotional abuse is for the sake of everyone who may not be able to identify it, and because I am hopelessly annoying. In a medically reviewed article titled "What is Emotional Abuse?", Sherry Gordon provides 6 sections of emotional abuse tactics. Marion happens to perform at least one action under every single one of these sections. When Lady Bird forgets to fold her uniform after school, Marion berates Lady Bird and blames her for her father's unemployment, because leaving her clothes around on her bedroom floor makes them look unkempt, and if she's unkempt, no one will hire her father. This falls under unrealistic expectations and emotional blackmail, because she's trying to emotionally manipulate Lady Bird by making her feel guilty. In fact, Marion uses emotional blackmail a lot through the movie, namely when she uses Lady Bird's father's depression against her and calls her selfish for not knowing about it, just because Lady Bird wants to be dropped off at school a block away so her friends don't see her getting dropped off by her parents, which, if teen comedies are of any merit, is a normal teen thing to do. Doesn't make her a bad person, just makes her a teenager. Emotional blackmail rears its ugly head again when Marion complains about how much money it takes to raise Lady Bird, because of course Lady Bird decided to be born and Marion and her husband had no say in it at all. That's exactly how birth works, and it's Lady Bird's fault for ever being born. Marion makes sure to tell Lady Bird that she'll never amount to anything or get into her desired schools every chance she gets, which falls under invalidation. Marion not only does this once or twice, but multiple times throughout the movie, to the point where Lady Bird herself internalizes this belief, which is a common reaction of being emotionally abused, and thinks she's also unable to attend the colleges she wants, or that she's a bad person. Marion constantly nitpicks or criticizes Lady Bird, whether it be her clothing, eating habits, or desires. When her daughter finds a dress she likes for prom, Marion says, "Isn't it a little too pink?" which causes Lady Bird to ask why she never compliments her in the infamous dressing room scene. When her daughter graduates high school, which is a massive accomplishment, Marion tells Lady Bird that she walked funny across the stage. When Lady Bird can't fit into a dress she wants to buy, Marion comments negatively about her eating habits. All of this falls under emotional blackmail and constant chaos, aka toxicity. No, these constant criticisms aren't normal. They chip away at a person's self-esteem and self-image. They may internalize these criticisms and become critical of themselves, which is not healthy. Marian tries to control and isolate Lady Bird, which is another emotionally abusive tactic, by refusing to let her go off to college, even if Lady Bird gets a scholarship or financial aid. So clearly, money is not the issue Marian is making it out to be. It's about keeping Lady Bird close so that she may continue to control her. It's certainly not keeping her close in order to love her, because Marian consistently withholds affection and attention from Lady Bird to the point where Lady Bird doesn't even think her own mother likes her. You can argue that Marian does have moments where she's nice to Lady Bird, but as I said earlier, this is common with abusers. They can uphold great images in the public, buy you gifts, and even compliment you. That does not invalidate all of the moments that they abuse you, though. And finally, Marian gives Lady Bird the silent treatment during the climax of the movie when Lady Bird gets accepted to a New York college, which leads Lady Bird to have a very palpable breakdown. She's screaming and crying and begging her mother to talk to her, to the point where she starts saying bad things about herself in order to get her mother to forgive her. Marian keeps this emotional abuse tactic going even till the end of the movie, where she refuses to walk her own daughter to the airport terminal so she can fly to the other side of the country. Some may argue that the playing field is more or less even between them because Lady Bird comes off as selfish most times and lacking in critical awareness of her loved ones. But as Jim Vorel, author of Lady Bird and Cycles of Abuse, puts it, quotes, "She behaves like a teenager, because she is one, duh. Marian, on the other hand, seems ossified in comparison, stuck in place and unable to change or grow, despite the higher expectations we must place on her as a middle-aged parent, with a background in psychiatric counseling rather than a high school student." End quote. So no, I do not believe Marian and Lady Bird have a quote-unquote complex relationship or a quote-unquote dysfunctional relationship. I think Marian is contributing to a cycle of abuse, more or less mimicking the way her mother treated her, which is so common it has a name: intergenerational abuse. It's not in the name of giving her daughter everything she never got as a child. It's not about preparing her daughter for the real world. If that were the case, Marian would be sensitive to her daughter's needs and desires. She would compliment and build her daughter up instead of using every available chance to tear her daughter down. Emotional abuse is not a normal or helpful way to parent. According to Sherry Gordon, the wounds of emotional abuse are, quote, invisible to others, hidden in the self-doubt, worthlessness, and self-loathing the victim feels. In fact, research indicates that the consequences of emotional abuse are just as severe as those from physical abuse. End quote. I think we need to take emotional abuse seriously and learn how to identify it, because if not, we're failing everyone who has ever experienced it. The mother wound, for everyone, regardless of gender identity, is one that hurts especially bad. I don't have a resounding final line or a funny joke to end this off with because it feels like something that can't be cleaned up at the end of a video. I want more people to talk about this. I want you guys to talk about this. And I hope you all know that you are so loved. If you resonated with anything in this video, I am so sorry. It'll get better one day. Bye. Stay safe. Wait. Fuck Sigmund Freud. This is a Sigmund Freud hate account. Don't let me talk about his country misogynistic bumpkin ass no more. And the reason I forgot, I can't take this off. And the reason I forgot he was Austrian and not American is because his vibes gave off heavy Mississippi backwoods redneck vibes, okay? And I can say that because I'm from the South. Yeehaw, brother. Oh yeah, that's not coming off. Oh my god. No, that's on there. I'm going to be Sigmund Freud for the rest of my life.